ACKS, including ACKS 2, focus on advancing the characters from adventurers to conquerors and then to kings. The system devotes a lot of attention to domain management and mass combat, because how else would you do the C and K parts of ACKS? Despite GURPS and ACKS being built on very different frameworks, the underlying simulationism paradigm makes them surprisingly compatible when it comes to non-combat stuff, such as domain management. Of course, you can remove the simulationism from GURPS, but why would you? ACKS domain management rules seem to be usable almost without any changes in GURPS, but I will explore that topic in more depth in the future. However, mass combat, as it is described in Domains at War battles and Domains at War campaigns, does require some changes. There are two ways to go about it: to work out how to derive ACKS unit statistics from GURPS stats, or to rework Domains at War battles to use GURPS resolution mechanics. In my opinion, the first option is the way to go here, even though you technically have to learn two systems, which is something many will balk at. However, Domains at War battles is actually rather simple, but at the same time deep and robust. Learning it doesn't require that much effort, so let's outline the work we have to perform here. We have to derive the following: unit movement rate and formation, unit AC, unit hit dice, unit hit points, unit attack throw, unit number of attacks, and unit morale. Outside of the unit stats, we'll have to think about statistics of officers, strategic ability, leadership ability, and morale modifier. I will not touch the battle rating, at least not yet. If we cover all of the above, we will be able to resolve a GURPS mass combat using the rules from Domains at War battles. This covers only the basics, no heroes and no magic, but I will try to adapt these rules as well, if this effort is successful, of course. Also, I have to clearly say something before I start, just to avoid misunderstandings. This is not meant to be a one-to-one conversion of GURPS to ACKS or the other way around. If you apply these guidelines to normal combat, they probably will not work. Some things will get lost in translation, and I will have to abstract some GURPS stuff. This is going to be a conversion between two different abstractions, as Domain at War battles abstract some ACKS stuff as well. Many of the minute details that GURPS combat may be concerned with just do not matter on the mass scale. The goal here is to be able to use Domains at War battles as a substitute for GURPS mass combat, because I am not satisfied with the latter. This will only be useful for fantasy and historical games. This will not work for modern or sci-fi games. The end result probably will differ from the existing ACKS stats, and that's okay, because if you make all your units using this approach, you will still have consistent stats. Just don't mix them together. With the disclaimer out of the way, let's begin. Unit movement rate and formation. Movement rate is based on the creature's movement rate. A rate of 6 feet results in 1, 2, 3, a rate of 90 feet results in 2, 3, 4, and a rate of 120 feet results in 2, 4, 6. Formation depends on the weapons used and sometimes on the nature of the creature itself. 120 feet seems to be the standard for an unencumbered human. I suggest doing the following. Move 1 and 2 after encumbrance translate to 1, 2, and 3. Move 3 and 4 become 2, 3, 4. And move 5 to 7 become 2, 4, 6. Formations will remain the same as they are in Domains at War battles. Unit AC. ACKS, unlike GURPS, doesn't have active defenses. Armor class, according to ACKS 2 revised rulebook, is a measure of how challenging it is to damage your character. An unarmored character of average attributes has an AC of 0. Thus, this represents something of a combination of active defenses and DR, if we are to use the GURPS terms. An unarmored character of average attributes in GURPS has no DR and has a dodge score of 8, so we will use this as a baseline. However, to get a sense of the various AC values, I'll have to consult the ACKS armors. There are 5 basic armor types: leather plus 1 AC, scale plus 2 AC, chain plus 3 AC, lamellar plus 4 AC, and plate plus 5 AC. If we look at the extensive armor table in GURPS Low-Tech, we will see that this roughly corresponds to AC equals torso dr divided by 2 rounded up. Shields in ACKS also add +1 to AC, and I think it's reasonable to keep it that way too. But what about the active defenses? ACKS doesn't have parry, but AC also benefits from high dexterity. I suggest representing it with a function of dodge. For example, AC gets a bonus of dodge -8 divided by 2 rounded down with a minimum of 0. You cannot get a penalty from low dodge. Thus, the formula is the following. Armor class equals torso dr divided by 2 rounded up, +1 if the unit has a shield, and plus dodge -8 divided by 2 rounded down with a minimum of 0. I think this should work fine for human-sized creatures, but it may produce values that are a bit off for monsters. If that's the case, adjustments will be in order. Unit hit dice. That's probably the most difficult one. Hit dice are very abstract. This is something equivalent to a character level. Hit dice are used to determine hit points and attack throws from monsters. In GURPS, HP are based on strength, and to hit rolls are based on dexterity. Most humanoids in ACKS have 1 HD, sometimes with a modifier. What makes things even more difficult is that HP also are somewhat abstract. I don't think there is a way to properly translate this concept of hit dice, so I will come up with a different measure. Hit dice equals 1 plus strength -10 divided by 5. This way, most of the humanoid creatures will have hit dice almost identical to those in ACKS. Larger monsters will have different values, but as long as we are using a consistent way to calculate everything, things should be fine, I think. Unit hit points. The ACKS formula for this is hit dice times number of creatures divided by 15. We keep it. Unit attack throw. This is another tough one, because ACKS is a D20 system while GURPS is GURPS. Probabilities just are not going to be the same, but that's not actually my goal. I just have to find some metric and approximate the attack throw value. In GURPS, 2 hit rolls are based on weapon skill that is in turn based on dexterity. Most of the regular troops in ACKS hit on 11+ or in its whereabouts, while powerful monsters sometimes hit on 4+ or even -4+. I suggest the following. Attack throw equals 17 minus hit dice minus attack skill divided by 2 rounded up. It seems like this should work. Unit number of attacks. The ACKS formula is quite complicated. Number of creatures times creatures number of attacks plus creatures cleave factor times average damage divided by size factor times 4.5. GURPS and ACKS are quite different in this regard, due to GURPS combat being played out in 1-second rounds. Thus, here we have to approximate how the creature would work in ACKS. The guidelines are as follows. If a creature has natural weapons, claws, horns, fangs, stingers, etc., then creature's number of attacks is equal to the number of said natural weapons. If this creature is suitable for combat, for example, a griffon would have 3 attacks, 2 claws plus 1 beak, while a horse would have 1 hoof attack, because it isn't really a combat monster. If a creature uses manufactured weapons, then the number of attacks is equal to the number of weapons held. Thus, a regular human soldier will have 1 attack, while a 4-armed bone golem would have 4 attacks. Cleave factor is a mechanic unique to ACKS, and it works well there. GURPS has no such thing by default, but since the cleave factor is based on hit dice, we just leave it as is. Size factor obviously depends on the creature's size. Fortunately, there is a size category table in ACKS that has real-world measurements, so we can more or less easily convert the sizes. More or less is because the breakpoints between the categories are different. Thus, a size modifier +1 GURPS Gnoll that is 7 feet tall is a man-sized creature in ACKS, but a size modifier +1 GURPS Ogre that is 9 feet tall is a large creature in ACKS. Average damage probably needs no adjustment. For the sake of simplicity, let's ignore the wounding multipliers. Also, I have to remind you that by default, Swing-based damage in GURPS can get ridiculously high with high strength, so I highly recommend using the reduced swing damage rows, or knowing your own strength. Unit morale. Morale isn't a thing in GURPS as a stat. Just assign an appropriate value. In ACKS, morale ranges from -4 for a monster that virtually never fights, to +4 for a monster that virtually never retreats or surrenders. Mindless monsters never roll morale. Let's make a couple of examples. First, let's try making an infantry unit of 120 spearmen with relatively low skills. The only relevant stats are shown on the screen right now, that is strength, weapon, attack skill, damage, armor, shield, move and dodge. And you can see the result on the screen as well. We ended up with something between 120 light infantry B and 120 heavy infantry C. I guess this is medium infantry then. Also, using this approach, humans will typically have 8 UHP, not 6. Now let's try making 60 ogres. You can also see the relevant stats on the screen, and the result as well. These ogres, when compared to ogre light infantry from Domains at War battles, are faster, have fewer hit dice and hit points. They have 6 attacks that hit on 10+, while the ACKS ogres have 4 attacks that hit on 6+. Is that okay? I'm not sure, but it probably is, because these are 2 different ogres. ACKS and GURPS are different games. With units out of the way, we also need the officer statistics. In the most basic case, we need their strategic ability, leadership ability and morale modifier. Leadership ability. In ACKS, this is equal to 4 plus charisma modifier and a +1 bonus for leadership proficiency. The maximum leadership is 8. Monstrous officers without charisma scores have leadership ability of 3 plus 1 per 4 HD, rounded down. I suggest the following approach. Leadership ability equals to leadership skill divided by 2, rounded down. For monstrous officers, just give them at least a point in leadership. Certain intelligent monsters would be able to get a decent leadership ability even when defaulting the skill. Strategic ability. In the context of battles, it seems to only affect initiative, but it also plays an important role in Domains at War campaigns. If I were short-sighted, I would just say use the strategy skill, but if I want to adapt the campaign's rules in the future, I have to bring things into the ACKS range of -3 to +6. Strategy is a skill in GURPS that defaults to IQ -6. I suggest the following. Strategic ability equals to strategy skill divided by 2 -3, with a minimum of -3 and maximum +6. Morale modifier. It seems that the morale modifier can also be based on the leadership skill. I suggest the following. Morale modifier equals to leadership skill divided by 3, rounded down. And that's it. This should cover most of the basic stuff, but not heroes and magic. Those concepts will require additional thoughts later. This is probably not the final version, this is something just off the top of my head. A rough approximation. But I'm okay with them for now. But I may change them later. In any case, thank you for watching. Check out ACKS, check out GURPS, and I'll see you next time.